When I was a kid, my mom would read me a bedtime story every night. She would read me my favorite book, Goodnight Moon. Classic. And as she read, we would say goodnight to everything around us. Goodnight room, goodnight moon, goodnight cow jumping over the moon. I never get tired of that book, no matter how many times she read it. And frankly, she never went crazy from reading the same book over and over again. Once she finished reading, she tucked me in, gave me a little peck on the forehead, and I'd fall asleep with a smile on my face. My days as a child were perfect. I didn't have to work for anything because all my wishes were granted. I didn't have to feel any pain because I was always surrounded by love. Growing up, I thought that the world revolved around me. But even then, being the only kid in the household at the time, it got pretty boring that I didn't have someone to play with because I was the only kid. One person changed that. It was my cousin, Cam. Even though Cam was 10 years older than me, and even though he had these priorities and interests with the adults, because he was an adult, he still spent time with me, and he still played with me. And we do all kinds of things like play video games, watch movies, take me out, just me and him, the two of us. No matter the day, whenever I'd hear that Cam was coming over, I'd perk up right away because that meant that I had someone to play with that day. He was always helping someone else or spending time with someone else, just like he did with me. And everyone loved him. He didn't play with me because he had to. He played with me because he knew the impact that he had on my life. And because of that impact, he decided to love me unconditionally. He loved me for who I was as a person, not for who I was to him. And at the time, I didn't realize how dearly he loved me. But I did know that I loved him. I loved Cam so much, and yet I never expressed that love or gratitude properly. Not until it was too late. On the night of October 2nd, 2010, my family got a call telling us that Cam had died at the age of 24 with no warning. Just like that, my cousin, my friend, my big brother was dead. That night, I felt true pain. I was in pain because I'd have to live on with the regret that I would never be able to thank him. I'd never be able to tell him that I love him one last time. I'd never be able to tell him that he was the big brother to me. I was in pain because a part of my happiness was gone with him. And the pain didn't stop there. At some point during my high school career, my life became this downward spiral. It wasn't perfect. It was deceitful. The family complex as my home was more dysfunctional than it was loving. The picture-perfect marriage of my parents was nothing more than a picture-perfect mirage. Everything that I believed in and admired about my family was torn apart right in front of me. And for the first time in my life, I felt lost, like I didn't belong anywhere. I started to hate life, but no one ever knew. I didn't allow them to know. I dared not show my true emotions, for if I did, then I had to realize that no one would understand how I felt. And I didn't want to be reminded of how alone I felt. On the outside, everyone just saw me as that nice, friendly guy, always had a smile on his face, always helping other people. But deep down, I wanted to be helped. I wanted someone to save me from that nightmare. Had I stayed on that isolated, confined road, who knows where I would be today? Who knows I would even be here? You see, I'm not the only one who starts the day by putting on this masked facade. I'm not the only one who has to go through adversity. I'm not the only one who feels lost in this world, and that's why I never understood as a child. I'm not the only one who's living a life. In my little childhood mind of mine, I just thought that there was no one out there that was living a tangible life like mine, filled with emotions and experience. In a sense, I just assumed that everyone were kind of like objects, only there to contribute to my life. Basically, I thought of my life as a story, and I was the main character in that story. You could call my friends and family supporting characters, classmates, teachers, they were minor characters, and people I didn't know, strangers, background characters, irrelevant to the main plot. When I was going through that downward spiral of a life, I ran away from my responsibilities. And as a typical teenager, I spent my quality homework time investing in procrastination, the internet, watching YouTube videos, playing video games, exploring social media, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat. Sorry, Mom. But one day, I found a word, an unofficial word that perfectly described how I felt about my life. Sonder. Sonder is a word created by this guy named John Koenig, who's the author of this online website called The Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows. Sonder simply means that each passerby we see, every stranger or irrelevant person we pass by, is living a life as vivid and as complex as our own. And these people, they may be background characters until we decide to interact and connect with them. And what makes stories even more interesting than shared stories that contain different connections and characters? So when I came across the word Sonder, I decided to give that a try. Because why not? Connecting with those characters around me. Slowly, I started opening up. I discovered new people's stories, considered their beliefs in life, empathized with their insecurities and adversities. Soon enough, I was thinking in different perspectives. I was becoming more open-minded. I learned a lot more than I did on my own, all because I simply connected with these people that I previously refused to open up to. It's only natural that we as human beings don't think about another circumstances another person's going through. Why is that? Because we're too busy focusing on ourselves, thinking about ourselves, on our own problems and priorities. Which, don't get me wrong, that's only natural. We all live our own separate lives after all, right? But what if our lives weren't so separate? What if we paid more attention to those around us? And I'm not talking about just acknowledging someone's existence with a hi, hello, how are you? I mean, what if we really pondered the adversities, the passions, and the motivations of another human being, say, your teacher, your coworker, or the kid who sits by himself every day at lunch, or you? What if for a single moment, instead of focusing on our problems and desires, we focus on their problems and desires? What do they want in life? Where have they been? How do they feel? How do you feel? And that's precisely what Sonder has shown me. If we can understand that everybody has a story that they're living, and we connect with that story, whether it's learning from or involving ourselves in their story, then we can accomplish so much more than we would have alone. We can transform ourselves into individuals that are capable of accomplishing the things that we desire in life. All of this goes back to who Cam was and how he lived his life. He didn't think of people as objects. He thought of them as living, breathing characters with their own stories that he can connect with and impact, just like he impacted my life. And that's exactly what I've been doing. I began opening up, breaking out my shell, connecting with people, discovering their stories with each and every one of them. These lessons that I've learned from Cam and from other people's stories have given me limitless knowledge that even to this day still teaches me vital lessons in becoming a better me, achieving the things I want in life, and overcoming the obstacles that may get in my way. And I never cease to find new stories because once upon a time, it's happening all around us. Once upon a time, there lived a student who earned all A's in all of his classes. And despite the fact that his peers had this amount of envy towards his resolve, he still felt like he wasn't enough, simply because his father wouldn't say the words, "I'm proud of you, son." Once upon a time, there lived a teenager who couldn't find the will to love herself because she was bound to the chains of insecurity. And despite carrying friends who argued otherwise, she took refuge in that cold blade of depression. Once upon a time, there lived a young man who's known for his jokes and laughs and changed lives with his unwavering positivity. And despite having found caring friends who he can call family, he still wonders which day he should kill himself. These are people I've connected with emotions no different from one another. Their stories resonate deep inside me, and I'm reassured that we aren't so alone in this world. These are people that have felt just as lost and as confused as I was, all wondering the same thing: why is my life horrible? But there's one thing that all of our stories have in common: a choice. That at any given moment, we have the power to say, this is not how our story is going to end. And that's exactly what we all have to realize. Even though we may be living our own lives, that's not even the fact. We aren't living our own lives. Because there are people out there living their own lives, their own stories, that may be going through similar things that we're going through. Although our lives may be separate at first, we can make that choice to connect, reach out, and discover. And once we do make that decision to connect, to listen to, and learn from these stories, then we can accomplish so much more than we would have alone. Any story can transform someone else's if they so choose to connect. Every story is capable of this. So tell me, what's your story? Thank you.